Nigel Farage has outlined his party reforms immigration plans, announcing that if the party were to win the next election, then he would only let UK citizens be eligible for welfare benefits and no foreign nationals.
He claims this would save the taxpayer £234 billion over the next few decades. However, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says that claim has no basis in reality. So let's debate Nigel Farage's proposal that benefits should be for Brits only with Mark Littlewood, who is Director of Popular Conservatism, who says if you haven't paid into the system, you can't get money out of it. Labour councillor Sebastian Salek says Brits value a sense of fair play, and if you play by the rules, you should be looked after, regardless where you come from. Mark Littlewood, how is this not pure prejudice and discrimination?
Well, there is discrimination in this, not based on grounds of race, but based on grounds of citizenship. And so it should be. I agree with Farage that we can't be the food bank of the world. We've basically got to have a system where if you've contributed, you can claim out, just like we have with private insurance. You can only claim out if you've taken out an insurance policy. That's what national insurance contributions were supposed to be.
But if you're here and you're working and you're contributing, then surely the system to which you're contributing should support you if you need it.
I've got some sympathy with that, but if you're here and contributing, I want you to have quite an easy pathway to British citizenship after a while. I mean, for example, if you're here at the moment working without being a British citizen, but you've got a right to work here, you're charged an additional surcharge to allow access to the NHS, for example. There's an additional surcharge.
But if you have indefinite leave to remain, then you're basically treated like a British citizen.
Well, correct, and that's why I think that's a bit of an oddity, isn't it? Why do we have indefinite leave to remain rather than just you're a citizen, yes or no?
Well, because
and what Farage wants us to get to, what I understand is, rather than having indefinite leave to remain, we'll give you a pathway to citizenship. Won't be easy, but if you really want to be a British citizen, you can take up that pathway.
Sebastian Salek, I can imagine, Nigel Farage has said this for a reason. And one of the reasons will be that a lot of voters would vote for it. So why wouldn't you?
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I was looking at some polling on this, and most people think that you should be able to access, if you're paying into the system, you should be able to access benefits very early on. They're saying instantly, 1 year, 3 years, that's where the general sense is. At the moment, you've got to wait 5 years. Labour's thinking about turning it into 10 years. And Farage is saying, let's scrap this entirely. So I think people are much more generous and much more fair-minded than maybe sometimes we give them credit. What I'd really take issue with is this idea of being the food bank of the world. People just aren't coming here to live a life on benefits. The stats show that isn't happening. Broadly, the number of people who are foreign-born who are on universal credit is proportionate to the number of people who are just foreign-born as part of the UK population. So that is a complete myth.
When you say that people are intrinsically more kind-hearted and generous than they're given credit for, isn't that a bit politically naive? Because surely what Nigel Farage is doing, what Labour is doing when they talk about the 10-year limit, they're playing to the gallery. They're listening to what people are saying and they're responding to it.
I think they've overplayed it on this issue, and I think deep down they know it. Look, I know you have to cut through. If you're a minority
they know
party,
it, why are they saying it?
Well, because if you're a minority party, you have to cut through. And Farage is really good at cutting through. He's a comms guy through and through, isn't he? And the fact that we're sitting here on breakfast TV in front of millions of people talking about this shows that he's succeeded. But is he really going to do it? It doesn't matter. His main goal now is to win the next general election. So he's going to say whatever he needs to say to get across the line. That is what his focus is at the moment.
Let's just back it round. Do you think, as we speak, as the system operates right now, are we over-generous?
I think there's definitely room to reform the welfare system. I don't think it's working for anybody. So there is space to think about how we can tweak it. But cutting off a large section of people who live in this country, a large section of people who aren't British citizens but who are working, who are contributing, who are treasured people in our communities quite often, that's not the way to go. I think it's deeply un-British to look at people like that.
So, Mark Littlewood, how would this work in your view? You've got someone who has indefinite leave to remain. So you've got someone who's come here from outside of the EU and they have been here for 5 or more years. They've got married. They've got children. Are you saying that the person that they're married to should have, because that person's a British citizen, should have access to all of the benefits that the UK provides, but that the person who's come from outside the EU should not?
Yeah, you're always going to be able to find the marginal cases. I think the overarching policy here, and I completely disagree with Sebastian that the welfare system needs a tweak. I mean, it needs a massive overhaul. We're spending more than £300 billion a year on welfare. Now, even if you are sceptical about Nigel Farage's sums adding up, and I gather a large number of people are, this bill has got to fall. And where I really welcome what they've contributed to the debate, even if this doesn't end up being government policy in the future, is we've got to row back from the huge amount that is being spent out.
But you're putting a huge burden on people who've come from outside of the UK, because we understand that those who have got settled status from the EU, outside of the EU, those who've got settled status from the EU would be excluded from
That's
this.
right. So, under Farage's plan, that's right.
Yeah. But you're putting an enormous burden on people who have come from elsewhere in the world in order to cope with this burgeoning welfare bill, rather than look at people from within the UK who might be using the welfare system.
Well, hang on, Susanna. The enormous burden at the moment is on the UK taxpayer, right? And I would have thought the sort of policy we want to get to is that we want to attract net contributors to the UK, that's to say people who are paying a bit more in tax than they're claiming in benefits, and we should be a lot more sceptical about net beneficiaries. That's to say people who claim more in benefits than they pay in tax.
You talked rather airily in your earlier answer there about these are marginal cases when Susanna gave you an example. Well, they're not marginal to the people who are experiencing them.
No, I agree.
They're central to their existence.
They are. And look, we've got to have a serious debate about whether you think north of £300 billion a year on welfare spending is sustainable. If not, who is going to lose it?
Well, we know even
At
the
least
government
Nigel
thinks
Farage
it's
has contributed something to that debate, and it's on a pretty big scale.
All right, thank you both very much. Responding to Reform UK's press conference yesterday, the Labour Party chair, Anna Turley MP, labelled Nigel Farage's plan, and I quote, half-baked, and claimed that it was falling apart in real time. She said that Reform had been forced to admit that their policy doesn't apply to people from the EU, and she said that destroyed claims that it covered all foreign-born nationals.
Well, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed that video, please make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the PopCon YouTube channel. You can also find out more about us on our website, popularconservatism.com, and you can follow us on social media. Details are in the show notes below.